Quite a bombshell out of New York yesterday. After remaining defiant through months of escalating controversy surrounding allegations of sexual harassment, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is resigning. Yesterday, the embattled Democrat and his lawyer had sharp words for the claims, calling them politically motivated and unfair. But after more than a decade in office, he will step down on August 24th. The New York State Legislature is deciding whether or not to push through with its impeachment inquiry, while Cuomo faces criminal investigations as well as potential civil lawsuits from his accusers. Bradley Blackburn is following the political fallout in New York City. Bradley, good morning.
Anne-Marie, good morning. The governor made this decision as he faced that potential impeachment with virtually no support in the state legislature. Still, he had seemed to be digging in for a political fight, so this resignation announcement came as a surprise. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is resigning in the wake of a sexual harassment scandal.
The best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing.
The announcement by the 63-year-old Democrat comes a week after the results of an independent investigation were released.
Governor Cuomo sexually harassed current and former state employees.
In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone. But I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn.
Charlotte Bennett is one of 11 women who accused Cuomo of acting inappropriately.
I thought he's trying to sleep with me.
Bennett's attorney says she is still processing the news.
Maybe this means the governor will stop denying her allegations.
In 13 days, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul takes power.
To represent the entire state of New York is a high honor.
She will be the state's first female governor.
More participatory.
Christine Quinn, the first female and openly gay speaker of the New York City Council, says Hochul will govern with more outside input compared to Cuomo's walled-off style.
I think it's noteworthy that the first woman governor is being brought in to clean up a mess made by a man.
Democrats say they are still considering impeaching Cuomo, and if convicted, it would bar him from future state office. And there is still the possibility that the governor could be charged criminally. There is an open criminal investigation, and Anne-Marie, when he leaves office in just under 2 weeks, that will not go away.
All right, Bradley, thank you very much. We want to bring in Rebecca Roiphe now, here to provide some legal analysis. She's a CBS News legal contributor and a former Manhattan prosecutor. So, Rebecca, when we all heard this bombshell, and it really was unexpected when the governor was speaking, because he didn't open with the fact that he was leaving office. He opened with a defense of, the behavior that is alleged, defending himself. So many wondered, and I wondered, whether or not he was leaving in order to avoid being only the second New York governor to be impeached. But there is still an ongoing conversation within the assembly as to whether or not they should go forward with an impeachment here. What is the likelihood that Cuomo could still be impeached, and what would that mean for his political future?
Well, I mean, it would, if his political future isn't already dead, I would think that would ensure that it would be. There are a number of questions that remain, and part of his defense there, the reason why he had his attorney stand up before he did, was because he still faces, as Bradley was saying, all of these potential legal repercussions. So he has reputational issues, a reputational legacy that he has his eye on, but he also, and a potential political future, and he has these legal problems. And so he's trying to address all of these different aspects of the trouble that he's in, and that's quite difficult. So, I don't know whether the impeachment will go forward, but whether it does or not, this is not the last chapter in this book.
So Cuomo resigning doesn't have an impact on the sexual harassment allegations and the possible criminal and civil, legal challenges that he's going to be facing or could be facing.
Well, it doesn't have a direct legal implication. I suppose one can think about that it cuts both ways. One could think, well, here he is stepping down. That in some way is an admission. And, while we try to get jurors in both civil and criminal cases who are impartial, would they consider something like that? Or is his stepping down with that statement a way to convey that he is innocent and have jurors think he's done the right thing here, he's looking out for New York, and perhaps be more sympathetic? So it's a little hard to say. It has no direct legal impact on those cases, but perhaps an indirect one.
So before Cuomo announced that he was stepping down, his attorney, Rita Glavin, held a presser where she tried to poke holes in the AG's report. She made it seem, we really did feel like the governor was not going anywhere, that he was digging in his heels, preparing for a fight. And in fact, the beginning and end of his statement sort of felt the same way. I'm wondering what you make of their presentation, why you think his attorney spoke first. What do you think that was about?
Well, I think she's teeing up the defense in these various different legal battles that he might have. And, she was in the unenviable position of having to defend on a number of different scores, publicly, politically, in that potential civil case, addressing prosecutors in that potential criminal case. So that's a really tall order because each of those different arenas has its different rules. And so, I think going forward, they'll be able to direct this defense in a more targeted way to a particular accusation. But right now, it's sort of an avalanche because it's all of these different things at the same time. One other thing that I would point to is there's this combination between, a politician who's built his career on, in part, protecting women, finding himself in this position. So how does he skirt that line? And, I think maybe the answer is he doesn't, but he's trying to both defend himself and apologize at the same time. I don't know how effective that is, but, that's what we're hearing. So we hear him say, I didn't do it. I specifically didn't do the things that could potentially be criminal. This was unfair, yet I am so sorry. There are 11 women who were hurt. So, I don't know how that sounds to the accusers, and I don't know how effective that is as a message. To me, it seems a little disingenuous to be apologizing and defending. And I think, anybody accused of anything before they lose, something significant like their entire political career deserves some due process, and he will have that, at least in the courts, if not during an impeachment hearing. But, it's a hard line because he's not fully defending himself and he's not fully apologizing. So I don't know how that works on either score.
Right. So the sexual harassment allegations, we'll put that aside because he has other problems. The New York State Assembly Judiciary Committee is also looking into his handling of COVID-19 nursing homes, and then allegations related to his use of state resources. It's part of their inquiry. It has to do with a book that he wrote about how he handled the COVID-19 pandemic. All of this, I presume, is going to factor in, and maybe he was thinking about this also when he resigned.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. Those sorts of scandals, it seems, don't attract the same kind of media attention as the sexual harassment ones, but are in many ways very, very serious. If they happen, those are serious corruption allegations. And so, it remains to be seen whether those will be aired in any way. If the impeachment hearings go forth, I assume the evidence will be accumulated and brought forth, and he'll have a chance to defend against those if there is an impeachment hearing. But if not, I think those sort of disappear and perhaps remain as a cloud over his legacy, along with this bigger cloud that has obviously, ruined the reputation of a politician, not just a politician who himself has had a long career in New York, but whose whole family has been a New York fixture for decades.
Yeah, great point. Rebecca, thank you very much.
Thank you.